And how do you envision that your role working as a expert coming from utility background, advising developers, advising civil engineering firms, how do you envision that what you spend your time on in a typical week or month would change in the next few years?
That pace of change is so fast that I've witnessed here in the last couple of years. It's almost hard to predict what 2 years is going to be like for anything. Um, so that's a tough one. Um, from a day-to-day standpoint of engineering, AI is getting more involved. That's what I'm hearing since I left utility. It was not involved when I left, but I was getting some intel yesterday that they're now starting to use that for routing. Um, and I said, well, it still requires a human heartbeat to put in variables in the program and analyze the output and things like that. So you're never going to have the easy button that does everything, the robot I'll call it, but it's certainly going to help do things. Look at more options, more variables, maybe just helping design transmission lines, which is what we started doing with computers years ago. Obviously, when you put all the variables in there, but um, so it's going to probably um, allow for things to get done quicker engineering wise, but permitting will still be the same maybe, and construction will still be the same. As a one of my bosses used to say years ago, um, until a robot can pull wire in on a transmission line, don't say we can build it faster or whatever, because it still takes the men wearing the hard hats to do that. So, but as far as engineering goes, yes, it is changing, and it's hard to predict what it's going to be like 2 years from now. But it's going to be probably similar to what I encountered when we got first computers. You were able to do more work quicker with the same number of people or with less people, as some firms would reduce their staff. Dominion Energy is not reducing staff; they're still growing, trying to keep up with the number of projects.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting challenge, and there's a lot of people weighing in on, do we envision that everyone across the board will just be expected to have a much higher workload and much higher productivity load because they have essentially all of these AI teammates now that they can delegate work to? Does it make it possible for people that are more entry to mid-level in their career be able to handle much more advanced projects much earlier on in their career because they're able to capture decades of institutional knowledge from folks like yourself into the models and forecast that? Or is it all the above? And then on top of that, a lot of these companies, especially in the data center industry, are publicly traded, and there's a lot of investor pressure to constantly get as financially efficient as possible, and that certainly plays a role. But utilities are unique in that they right now have one of the biggest bottlenecks, one of the biggest choke points in the industry, is the developers have more capital coming in. They can make hardware faster. Some of the hardware they can make faster. They can sell these projects faster. But if you can't get utility hookups for years, then all of a sudden you're talking about alternate energy. But the reality is, despite the fact that I've had some really interesting founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs on this podcast talking about hydrogen fuel cells and liquid natural gas and small modular reactors, it seems like most of those alternate data center utility concepts are at least a few years away from being able to get mass adoption. Is that what you're seeing as well? Or do you see
Yes.
some of those alternate energy sources being a little further along than others?
I think some are further along than others. The SMRs are, I think, way out here in Virginia. Gas on-site generation, and that's what we're looking at doing right now because of the volume of projects in front of us at Dominion. Supply chain is an issue on getting certain things, but getting the actual power delivered. We can easily engineer and build a transmission line, but if they don't have the generation to feed all the projects, and that's the problem today, then you've got to do your own generation, and that's what we're looking into for our project that I'm helping my boss on. And so that has certainly changed here. And since I retired, I didn't think that was the case, but the number of projects is just overwhelmed, and projects size has gotten bigger. The campus styles, hyperscalers in the gigawatts, and you can't build a power station that fast. And this is probably true in Virginia and every other state in the country. You think you can, but it takes a long time to get permitting and all those things. So it's years to even get the permits to start construction on those kind of things. So it's making things obviously more difficult all the way around.
I had two longtime oil and gas industry pros on the podcast last year, and they were working with a company that was setting up turbines to run generators off of liquid natural gas. And we talked about how their take was that the liquid natural gas lines were running next to railroads. So in a lot of cases, as long as the developer was flexible enough to be within a half a mile or a mile of that opened up opportunities. And all of a sudden, like 6 months later, now another constraint that came up is they can't manufacture the turbines fast enough. So they can sell the projects, they can put in the lines, and then all of a sudden they can't have the missing link between the natural gas lines and the generators because the turbines can't get manufactured quickly enough.
Yeah, that's a very true one. It's a chicken and the egg syndrome all the time. If you get the gas, you can't get the turbine. You get the turbine, you can't get the gas, and you get those, you can't get the permits. So it's you never know what's going to be the next major hurdle to get, receive, and to make your project come to fruition. So, and I'm encountering that on our project. It's changing every week or month right now as to what's the hot item.